The officer's hand was already inside the glove compartment before he had even finished asking for the registration. That was the first thing Malik noticed. Not the flashing lights, not the cold January air biting through his jacket window, but the hand, already moving, already searching. Like the stop itself was just a formality, a brief ritual before the real business began. Malik Osi Bansu had been driving for 11 hours straight. He had left his apartment in Baltimore at 4 in the morning, loaded everything he owned into the back of his black Chevy Silverado, and pointed himself toward Houston, where a new job was waiting. A real one. The kind he had worked 7 years to get. Senior structural engineer at a firm that had actually read his portfolio before they called him, actually looked at his work before they offered him a salary that made him sit down in his kitchen and read the email 3 times. He had not been speeding. He had checked. The cruiser had come out of a rest stop off I-20, just past the Louisiana state line, and fallen in behind him for about 2 miles before the lights came on. Malik had pulled over immediately, put both hands on the wheel, and waited. He had done this before. He knew how it went. The officer who approached his window was a big man, thick through the shoulders, with the kind of face that seemed to have been set in mild contempt a long time ago and never fully recovered. His name tag read Burrell. He did not say good evening. He said, license and registration, in the tone of a man who had already decided something. Malik handed both over without a word. Burrell looked at the license the way people look at a receipt they suspect has an error. He looked at the registration. He looked at the truck. He looked at Malik. Where you headed? Houston, sir. What's in Houston? A job, sir. Burrell's eyes moved to the back seat where a duffel bag sat, a folded blanket, a box of books sealed with packing tape. What kind of job? Structural engineering. There was a pause. Not a long one, just long enough to mean something. Step out of the vehicle, please. Malik did not argue. He did not ask why. He opened the door slowly, kept his hands visible, and stood beside the truck in the cold dark of the Louisiana shoulder while 18-wheelers blew past and rocked the air around him. Burrell called in a second unit. The deputy who arrived was younger, maybe 25, with an uncertain look on his face that he was working hard to suppress. His name was Thibodeau. He stood near the front of the truck and said nothing, watching Burrell walk the perimeter of the Silverado like he was appraising something. You mind if I take a look inside? Malik looked at him. Do I have a choice? I'm asking nicely. I don't consent to a search, Officer Burrell. Burrell smiled at that. Not a warm smile. The kind of smile that meant he had expected this answer and had already decided it didn't matter. My K9 hit on your vehicle, he said. That gives me probable cause. From the cruiser, Burrell's partner, a Belgian Malinois named something Malik didn't catch, had been walked around the truck twice. Malik had watched the whole thing. He had seen the dog sit. He had also seen Burrell give a short, almost imperceptible hand signal just before it did. He noted that. He filed it carefully in the part of his mind that was not angry, the part that was simply recording. Burrell opened the passenger door. He went through the glove compartment first. Insurance documents, a tire pressure gauge, a small notebook Malik used for sight sketches. He turned each item over with the bored efficiency of a man who had done this many times. Then, a center console, a phone charger, a pack of gum, a folded receipt from a gas station in Virginia. He moved to the back seat. He unzipped the duffel bag with both hands and turned it upside down over the seat. Clothes fell out, a toiletry kit, a pair of dress shoes wrapped in a plastic bag. Burrell pressed his hands along the sides of the empty bag, feeling for hidden compartments that were not there. The box of books he opened with a pocket knife, cutting the tape with the casual authority of a man who does not expect to be asked to pay for the tape. Engineering textbooks, a structural analysis manual, a worn copy of something by James Baldwin that Malik had been meaning to reread. Burrell set it all aside. Then he saw the case. It was in the truck bed, under a moving blanket, strapped down with 2 ratchet straps, a hard-sided aluminum case roughly the size of a carry-on bag with a combination lock on the front. Burrell climbed into the bed without asking. He crouched beside it. He lifted it, found it heavy, and set it back down. What's in here? Malik, standing on the shoulder with Thibodeau 2 feet to his left, looked at the case and then back at Burrell. Personal property. Open it. That case is locked for a reason, officer. I have probable cause to search this vehicle. That includes that case. Open it. There was a long moment, the kind that feels longer than it is. Malik looked at the case. He looked at Burrell. He thought about the 7 years. He thought about Houston. He thought about the way the dog had sat. "All right," he said quietly. "All right." He climbed into the truck bed. He looked at Burrell once, a look that held something Burrell could not quite read. Then he turned the dials, 3 numbers. He opened the case. Burrell leaned forward, and then he stopped. Inside, on the left side of the case, in a custom foam insert, sat a camera body and 2 lenses. On the right side, in a separate foam cutout, was a portfolio binder thick with photographs, his own, printed full size, and on top of the binder, resting face up, was a credential wallet. Burrell reached for it automatically, the way people reach for things they realize immediately they should not have touched. He opened it. The badge on the left side was gold, not a police badge, not a government contractor ID, not even a federal agency card. It was a press credential. But what was on the right side was what stopped him. A Department of Defense Common Access card, and behind it, tucked in a separate sleeve, a FEMA Urban Search and Rescue certification card, and behind that, a card from the Army Corps of Engineers identifying Malik O.C. Bonsu, P.E., as a credentialed structural assessor attached to disaster response operation. And below all of that, almost as an afterthought, a folded letter on White House stationery. Not a form letter, not the kind of thing a constituent receives after writing to their representative, the kind with a specific signature, the kind that thanks a specific person by name for their specific contribution to a specific operation after Hurricane Ida. Burrell's hand holding the credential wallet went very still. Thibodeau, who had walked closer to see what was happening, saw the letter. He took a step back. He looked at Malik. He looked at the ground. Malik did not smile. He did not say anything. He just waited. Burrell closed the credential wallet and set it back in the case very carefully, the way you set something down when you have suddenly understood that it belongs to someone else entirely. "You can," he started. "I'd like your badge number," Malik said, "and a written record of this stop. I'd like a citation number or a documentation of the reason for the stop. And I'd like both of your body camera footage preserved, please. Now, before we proceed any further." His voice was level. It was not angry. It was something more unsettling than angry. It was precise. Thibodeau cleared his throat. "Sir," he said to Burrell, not to Malik, to Burrell. I heard him," Burrell said. There was another silence. The kind that means something has already been decided. It's only the words that haven't caught up yet. What happened in the 3 weeks after that stop is a matter of public record, which means it is also a matter of what people chose to look at. Malik had a dashcam. He had installed it himself, a dual camera system with both front and rear-facing lenses. After the last time, something like this had happened. Not on a highway, but in a parking garage 3 years earlier, a different state, a different uniform. The same hand already moving before the question was finished. He had spent $60 on the camera and thought about it every day since, as 60 of the best dollars he had ever spent. The footage from the Louisiana stop showed Burrell's K9 handler giving the sit command before the dog reached the rear tire. It showed this clearly. It showed it twice from 2 angles. Malik sent the footage to the Louisiana State Police Internal Affairs Division, the ACLU, and his attorney, a woman named Frederica Moss, who had been doing civil rights law in New Orleans for 22 years, and who, when Malik sent her the video, replied within 4 minutes. He also sent it to the Army Corps of Engineers liaison, who had issued his disaster response credentials, and who, it turned out, had contacts in the State Attorney General's office and no particular patience for the use of trained animals as tools for circumventing the Fourth Amendment. Thibodeau filed a separate report the same night. His report corroborated the dashcam footage. He wrote in plain departmental language that the K9 alert appeared to have been cued manually, that he observed no indicators of contraband during the stop, and that the subject had been cooperative and professional throughout. He submitted it before he went home. He told his supervisor what he had done before he submitted it, which was either an act of integrity or an act of someone who understood that the dashcam footage was going to surface eventually, and wanted to be clearly on the right side of it before it did. Maybe both. Probably both. People are complicated that way. Burrell was placed on administrative leave pending review 11 days later. The formal investigation found 3 prior stops with similar patterns. Same handler, same dog, same absence of any found contraband, same demographic profile of the drivers. One of those drivers had been charged. The charge was later dismissed. The others had not been charged because there had been nothing to charge them with. because there had never been anything there in the first place. Burrell resigned before the investigation concluded. His attorney released a statement that said his client had served with dedication for 14 years and was choosing to focus on his family. The statement did not mention Malik O.C. Bonsu. It did not mention the credential wallet or the White House letter or the dashcam footage or Thibodeau's separate report. Malik arrived in Houston on a Wednesday. He was 4 days behind schedule because he had spent 3 of those days sitting in a conference room in Baton Rouge with Frederica Moss and a representative from the State Attorney General's office, going through the footage frame by frame. He was tired in a way that sleep does not entirely fix. His new office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, and on his first morning there, he stood at the window for a long time, looking at the city, thinking about the cost of things that should not have cost anything. The civil suit was filed the following month. It named the parish, the department, the specific unit responsible for the K-9 program, and Officer Burrell individually. Frederica Moss argued, as she had argued in 4 prior cases and would argue in however many came after, that the use of a trained canine alert as manufactured probable cause was not a novel tactic, was not an isolated incident, and was not something that could be corrected by the departure of a single officer. She argued this in writing, in depositions, and eventually in open court, where she was very calm and very specific, and where the defense attorney had the particular difficulty of arguing against footage that existed and was clear. The case settled 14 months after the stop on I-20. The terms included a financial payment to Malik, the amount of which was not disclosed, mandatory retraining of the department's K-9 unit and handlers, and a new policy requiring dual officer documentation for any K-9 deployment during a traffic stop. It also included a requirement that body camera footage from such stops be preserved for a minimum of 3 years, rather than the previous 30 days. Malik used part of the settlement to establish a small scholarship fund at his undergraduate university, a state school in Maryland where he had worked 2 jobs while studying and had graduated with honors and had not yet learned, at 22, just how many times he would have to prove himself to people who had already decided what he was before he opened his mouth. The scholarship was for engineering students, for students who were first generation, for students who were paying for it themselves. He named it after his mother. There is a version of this story that ends with the moment Burrell opened that credential wallet and went still. That version is satisfying in a particular way. The pivot, the reversal, the instant in which power rearranges itself around a piece of laminated plastic. But the real story is what Malik did before that moment. The dash cam he installed because he had learned. The way he kept his hands visible and his voice level, not because he wasn't angry, he was. A controlled and practiced anger that had been with him for a long time. But because he understood that anger, in that moment, on that shoulder, was not a tool. The way he noted the hand signal and filed it away. The way he said, "I don't consent to a search," knowing it would not stop the search, because the point was not to stop it. The point was to be clear on the record about what had been refused. The way he asked for badge numbers and citation documentation, while standing in the cold, not in a conference room afterward. The credential wallet mattered. It opened a door that might otherwise have stayed closed. That is true. But the door was opened by a man who had been preparing to open it, one way or another, for a very long time. Some people carry their credentials in a case in the truck bed because it's convenient. Malik carried his because he had learned, the hard way and more than once, that there are moments when the only proof that matters is the proof you can hold in your hand and put in front of someone who has already made up their mind. He knew that before the lights came on behind him on I-20, he knew it before Baltimore, before the parking garage, before the first time a hand moved before the question was finished. That knowledge cost him things he should never have had to pay. But it was also, in the end, the thing that won.